rubbish, or the ego's never satisfied. Nothing's ever right for it.
It's
just such a
No, it's
pain.
not.
exhausting.
Right?
It is exhausting.
It's exhausting.
That's why you get tired. He says all tiredness or all
lethargy.
And that is from judgment.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just ego's judgment. Yeah, just constantly being in judgment. It's like, it's exhausting judging everything all day. I'll get up tomorrow and I'll keep judging and I'll get exhausted again.
I don't do it. The mind just continues along that path. You unhealthy. Luster it down and hold it tight to stop it from doing it. It's like very hard.
You can't stop it.
It's very hard.
But there is a way to. It's sort of. I know you really, really, really want to come over here, don't you? So, come on. It's okay. Stay there. So that the only way for the ego is that some paths they say to, make friends with your ego or try to stop the ego and all this. It's literally, it just says the only way the ego will start to disappear is when you stop joining it. You stop participating in it with it.
Yep.
So when
don't engage. Like hear it and just go. I'm not going there. Not in the mood for you today. Just don't give it floor space. Don't give it attention.
But my ego is like a termite. I'll get a thought and I say to it, it's going to be like a worm. It'll just keep coming back and back. I'm starting to recognise its patterns. And this is another thing from Bob's book. The body acts as your interface with an agent in the outer world.
Yes.
He sums it up beautifully.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyhow, but it's exhausting.
So it seems like from what people have been saying here in this group, couple of people anyway, getting deeper and deeper insight. I can't have you on my knee while I read the book. Anyone want it?
Poor little love.
Yeah. Give you Kevin's jacket to
Put hair all over.
He's a nice little bed. Where's Lucky? He won't mind.
Got separation anxiety.
So it's like as we start to see the progress, the development of trust, it's like holographic. So people have been just sharing about, Cathy shared about how she had an insight watching a football match. Teresa's been sharing over the last few months about just your insights and just watching. So what happens is we start to shift more into the witness of the thoughts rather than being joined with them. So I was just saying about how we actually don't know that there's two stages to being upset. The thought comes in and then we join it, and we can only get upset when we join or believe in the thought. So what happens is slowly over time, as we learn more about our thought system and we go, okay, as I left off before lunch, we're coming back to see mind. We're coming back to see I'm only affected by my thoughts. I'm not actually affected by what anyone does here. I'm only affected by the thoughts that I believe about what they're doing and saying. So I start to see actually the characters are just moving around saying things, and then I have a whole lot of thoughts about them. But it's not actually, they're not my thoughts. Thoughts come in and tell me. They go, okay, I'm going to, so if you can see the ego like a commentator on a football match. So this is a football match, and then the ego comes in to commentate. So it sits there and it says, oh, you really stuffed up today when you said blah, 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 or you didn't smile at someone, and it critiques you. And so it's like, if you listen to a football match, someone kicks a ball and then the commentator will say, that was a good kick. This is what the ego's like. It's it watches bodies move around and words being said, and then it tells you.
Judges.
It judges you and it judges everyone else. And so what we're starting to do is starting to shift away into the observer of those thoughts. So we watch. So some funny things I've heard over the years, Namira's great one, she's got some fantastic little pearls. She said, oh, I just turn and say, oh, thanks for sharing. But no thanks. You know, a little bit like,
Fuck off.
okay, thank you. It's literally like,
You're such a lady.
you know, you could literally, you can even observe the ego and just laugh and say, oh, that old chestnut,
Yeah.
believe that again, ha ha. So you start to become the observer of the thoughts, and then all of a sudden you'll find you'll be observing, and then you'll be caught up in it again, and then you'll start to become more of the observer of it. And it's literally like the ego's offering you. You were just saying something about what grievance do you want to pick up today? Like I see the ego as like a big plate of hors d'oeuvres. You know, which grievance or judgment would you like to pick up this morning? So you wake up and it offers you, you know, would you like to be upset with your boss? Would you be upset with, you know, and it's really like all the old judgments come back in. Do you want to have the same, go, wow, I've actually been in these beliefs for so many years. You know? It's like, which beliefs and grievances and upsets and things would you like to pick up?
And if you don't pick up one, it will say, this is an old favourite. How about this one?
The old chestnut.
The old chestnut.
Or the word.
Yeah.
But it's normally, in my case, is worrying me specifically.
Mark, can you project a bit more?
Not really. I'm not really projecting.
We've got the soft voices here.
Yeah, so it's normally, for me, it's normally a worry that particularly bothers me. So it's not particularly a judgment against somebody. I'm not having issues in relationships.
So
It has
for you
to be,
to,
but it will be something like an anxiety.
okay, so every, something come up on screen. Everything is a judgment. For you to worry about something, you have to have a judgment to worry. You have to have had a judgment.
But I think most of us are here to the key one, I think, for me, is survival. I think it's probably
Okay.
for a lot of people.
So your judgment, did you want to share what it is? Or?
Well, my judgment is I'm virtually live in poverty. I am surviving, but only in the immediate. Am I going to be able to survive another 2 months? Blah, blah.
Okay,
so there's always this big fear going on. How long have I got?
All right, so say you're 50 years old, and say from the age of 20, you got a fear thought. What's going to happen when I don't have enough? Right, so every day for the last 30 years, you've woken up, what's going to happen when I don't have enough? Every day for the last 30 years, you've got enough, right? You've had enough. You've had exactly what you need. You've got clothes, you've got food, right? But you've missed out on living and being joyful, having enough. So you wake up today, so I've got enough today. But rather you wake up for every day for 30 years, and you say, what's going to happen when I don't have enough? But you've actually had enough every day. So rather than saying what's going to happen when I don't have enough, say what have I got now? Do I have enough now?
So good present.
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry, Kate. I was just going to say, for me, it's almost like I have to undo the thought that I haven't got enough sort of thing, because I find like even though I can look around and go, I'm looked after, I've been looked after, I've already had enough, it doesn't cancel out that underlying thought. It's almost like a positive thinking thing, and still the virus is running underneath sort of thing. And it's like I have to release that fearful thought. I have to see it as false or relinquish it and surrender it to actually have the space in my mind to appreciate that I have enough, sort of, that I'm taken care of, sort of thing. Because yet doesn't sort of get it. You know, where I can look around and experientially I can go, hang on a second. You know, evidence says you have enough and you've been taken care of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also realise I'm taken care of and I have enough in the moment, but it's still that voice is very persistent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is everybody has that, by the way. And the only reason, the only way you can ever be free of it is if you focus more on the truth, which is right now. So say, for example, 2 years ago, you worried about where you were going to be in 2 years' time. And here you are in 2 years' time.
What could be better than this?
Still,
And right this moment.
still. So what we worry about is not having enough food,
Yep.
not having anywhere to live,
Absolutely.
right? They're the two biggest fears, and they were mine. And then what I saw was I had been worrying about those things for all the years, and yet every single day I had food and had somewhere to live. And then what I saw as well, this is something else that would be helpful, what I worked out with the course, was if there ever came a day where I had no food or no bed to sleep in or no house, I would turn to the Holy Spirit and say, guide me where you need me to go. Right? And that would be it. So it was like an added little thing that the guidance would lead me. Now, I actually, you have to, when I say have to, I would encourage you at some stage is to go into a visualisation where you are homeless, where you're hungry, just go into the imagination of it. Because just something that I did, I went into my greatest fear and then I asked the Holy Spirit or Jesus to come in with me. And I actually saw myself in the gutter outside my house because I was so fearful of losing my house and having nowhere to live. And I just visualised myself lying in the gutter with no food, with nothing. And all of a sudden I started laughing. And I thought, there's nothing to fear. There's absolutely nothing to fear. I don't know how to explain it, but it just all vanished because I'm telling you what I experienced, but it was just Jesus led me there, and he just said, come with me, and he laid me down in the gutter, and for some reason I laid in the gutter in my mind. I could feel the concrete and everything, the cold concrete, and then I just started laughing. And I don't know how, but it got healed in my mind, and I never worried about that again. That was the miracle that shifted the fear of worrying about anything, because I literally could walk outside now. We had proper metal concrete gutters, and I could literally lie down in it, and I could live there for a day or a week. I could live there. I could walk around and eat some trees. I eat some fruit off the trees or something. He showed me. Go for a walk. Go somewhere. I could knock on someone's door and say, have you got 2 pieces of bread? Would you be able to give me a couple of pieces of bread for me to live on? I could live on very little. He literally said, you can go anywhere. And then all of a sudden around that time, people started to message me and say, hey, I've actually made up a bed for you at my house. Sophie made up this really beautiful bed with all these elephant cushions all over, and she sent me a photo. She said, I've just made you up this bed. You can come and stay anytime you like. And then a couple of other people said, I've got a bed for you in my house. And that was sort of like another little miracle, because what happens is we have this idea about how we feel safe, and at that stage I thought I have to own my own place and have to have my own house, have to have a mortgage, I have to not live with anyone, and this is how I like it. And then they had to go, because that was my preference. They were preferences, but they were attachments actually, not preferences. And then I was guided to sell my house and go and live with my mum. And I lived there with her for 14 months in one of her rooms, and then I was shown you could live in your car. You could
Well,
go
I
anywhere.
have lived in my car. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
my daughter's
So
lived in her car.
it's not an experience I would favour.
Well, I would see you can either live in a car with joy or can live in a car in painful thoughts about it. So if you were living, if your life was where you were living in the gutter and you had nothing to cover you, living in a car would be like paradise, you see. To live in a car rather than to live in a gutter, you see, that would be paradise. But if you're living in a car and you think this is terrible, then there could be thoughts about how would people see me, whatever thoughts, painful, that I'm judged. All judgment is self-judgment. So I'm sort of giving you the whole cosmic course in one go. But very, very slowly, you'll come to realise that it doesn't matter where you go or what you do. The course says that anything you need will be given to you. So you might go out and there was a little film on was going around Facebook with this homeless man in London, I think. He was so joyful. He was purely awake. And he just fed the pigeons every day, go and get the bread. I think a few people might have seen that. He would get up every morning and get on the bus and go to the library, I think. He'd go, look at all these books I own because I can read them every day. So
he looked for the blessing in everything.
He looked at people that were walking along the street every morning in their suit, frowns on their faces, going to work in a building. He was in the city, and he would sit there nice and warm in his little sleeping bag out in the open, and the birds would come and he'd be laughing.
Yeah.
And this guy decided to interview him. He's wholly awake. He's like, this is fantastic. Look, I get to live here, and the birds are my friends, and and yet we would see him as, I was a homeless person. Oh, the poor thing. He didn't see himself that way. He looked at us. It's like, look, we're in a cage. Put yourself in a cage.
Prison.
Yeah, we're the jailers. We're holding ourselves in the cage.
What you're doing, Cate, too, I don't know my circumstances, but you must always offer hope. It doesn't matter what's going on in someone's life, is not sort of over exaggerating things, but that comes time and time again. You must, and it's spoken about in the course too. Like, I think it's lesson 165 or something. Let not my mind deny the thought of God. Practice today and hope. Hope indeed is, I've forgotten the rest of it, but it sort of comes back in any situation that there's got to be hope there. And I've heard that time and time again. It's something that you have to leave with people with is that.
So are you saying this because you think I may not have given?
No, it's just my little add-on, Cate.
Cate, can you tell us what Teresa said? I didn't hear anything.
What's going on?
Okay, sorry, I just had to mute you, Annalie, because there was a lot of background noise there. But
what was Annalie saying?
I didn't hear it. Can you type that, Annalie? Type it in for us, love. We'll read it out. So.
No, I wasn't sort of taking it. It was just an add-on.
Just an add-on, okay.
Because I think I hear that time and time again. You must leave people with hope.
Yeah. So the only happiness really comes from, and this I'm just going to be very honest, it only comes from the experience of knowing, deeply knowing that you are not the body. That's the only way you can be free, because every time you identify yourself as the body, you will be somehow living in fear, because the evidence, if you identify yourself as a body, every evidence says that I can be hurt, I can be too hot, too cold, too hungry, too this, too that.
And I can be destroyed because obviously the body doesn't last.
Yes, that's, yeah, and I can suffer, I can get sick, and I can die. So if I identify as my body, I know bodies they stop working, or they get hit.
Well, as you get older, you realise that.
So freedom comes from identifying yourself as spirit or mind or something other than the body. And that's the hope. That's the hope of happiness. And that only how willing am I to open up to this idea that I'm not a body, but I'm spirit. You know, if this is the way to freedom, then it's just developing the trust in that and going along that path. Now, generally it takes a long time to get to that stage.
Yeah.
So you're being introduced to, as Mark's new student, so he's getting thrown into the new ideas, but he's here, and Jesus doesn't muck around in his course. He calls a spade a spade. He hits us across the face constantly with the truth.
Good.
So I'm not going to, so Jessica's back on, and Nikki, hi everyone. So I am recording.
Now, did Annalie put something?
Oh. Can you repeat what others in your group say, because I can't hear them? Okay.
That was Teresa speaking. She gave me three.
Okay, Teresa was saying to offer hope to anyone that comes here, that they should leave with some hope.
I think it's just general. I wasn't sort of
Yes.
isolating it to this group, but it's just something that stays with me. That the line said, practice today and hope, for hope indeed is justified. Don't ever give it the flick, because it's such a critical. I've heard Billy Connolly say this. He said when he was diagnosed with his Parkinson's, he went to a doctor, and the doctor said, well, there's nothing we can do. You know, we've exhausted treatments. And Billy said the other way he could have handled it is, he said, at this moment, there isn't anything, you know, other than what we have, but he wasn't closing the door on it. So I think if you can take it across, what I'm getting at, Kate.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of saying in any situation that to have people think they can have faith rather than hope. Because to me, saying that, you know, you've got to have hope, or you to have hope, is like, you know, like surely the future's got to be better. Whereas if you have faith, it's like just you know, really letting it go and just trusting, and not sort of thinking, oh, I don't know.
Can get better in the future.
Well, Kevin and I talk about this word hope quite a bit, and he says, and I agree, because he says exactly what you said just then, that this idea of hope is sort of like an ego thing, as oh, maybe it's going to be better in the future.
Yeah.
But that hope is that, oh, I've got a really crappy job, I hope the next one gives me the happiness. So that's the ego's hope in the ego's world.
Right.
But I look at the Course in Miracles as like true hope.
Okay.
Because it's proven that it does lead you to happiness. So it is sort of like another way of seeing hope. It's not false hope.
Well,
No.
it's even another way of saying to have the trust.
Trust.
the
Yeah.
hope or trust. You could use.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll
Yeah.
investigate. I'll do a little research on it for next week, because it's good you've brought it up, because I've just always resonated with it and not thought of going any
Yeah.
other way. Maybe
Yeah.
someone else in the community here might. But I'll do a little micro search, and it's a good thing.
It is
It's
you.
almost like having steps too, almost like stages of in the process too. Like hope. I mean, today whatever you said today, Cate, about saying, I don't know how to see this differently or whatever. It feels so congruent. It's like it's giving me hope. It's like I feel like I've hit something honest in me and give me something congruent that will open my mind to actually receiving something else. So I feel for the first time in 100 years, I have hope.
Yeah, because she said
something can come in differently and show me, sort of thing.
you said to admit I am stuck in this view. I don't know how to see this differently.
Yeah, so that has given me hope.
Yeah.
And it's a hope for something different. It's a hope for a change of mind. It's not for a better future. It's a hope for a change.
Yeah, hope for a change. Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
Differently.
Yeah. That's really, that pinpoints it.
And like you said, it's not a false hope. It's a true
That's right.
hope. Not like just flying in the wind sort of thing. It's based on something true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. So that sort of puts us the right orientation for that word hope.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they can go and rewrite that whole lesson in the text. No, but it's sort of interesting because.
So the manual for teachers at number 4, what are the characteristics of God's teachers? You don't have to have this. I thought I might just read through it myself if you're okay with that. The surface traits of God's teachers are not at all alike. So the surface traits, as in the surface of our bodies, our sort of like background sort of personalities, we tend to have some sort of. So everyone's going to, on form, going to look a little bit different.
Where are you reading?
Sorry, Cate, can I have what page?
1576 in the purple book.
Is this from
Manual for Teachers?
Characteristics of God's Teachers?
Yes.
And which number?
4, right up the top. Under the heading. What are the characteristics of God's teachers?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the surface traits of God's teachers are not at all alike. They do not look alike to the body's eyes. They come from vastly different backgrounds. Their experiences of the world vary greatly, and their superficial personalities are quite distinct. Nor at the beginning stages of their functioning as teachers of God have they yet acquired the deeper characteristics that will establish them as what they are. God gives special gifts to his teachers because they have a special role in his plan for atonement. Their specialness is, of course, only temporary, set in time as a means of leading out of time. These special gifts, born in the holy relationship towards which the teaching, learning situation is geared, becomes characteristic of all teachers of God who have advanced in their own learning. In this respect, they are all alike. All differences among the sons of God are temporary. Nevertheless, in time, it can be said that the advanced teachers of God have this following characteristics. So there's 10 characteristics that it goes through, but we're only going to go through the first one today, which is trust, because it has the stages of the development of trust. So this is just the introduction. This is so trust is the first characteristic. This is the foundation on which their ability to fulfill their function rests. So the foundation, so trust is a really big foundation of fulfilling your purpose, because how can you fulfill a purpose unless you're trusting in the guide within to guide you?
Yeah.
So it is the foundation. Perception. Yeah.
Can I just say, I feel nowhere near a teacher of God. Like, yeah, I'm just wondering, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you, believe it or not, you are. Everyone is.
Yeah.
And what he's saying here, he's sort of saying two different things. He's saying everyone's a teacher of God, but the advanced teachers have these. So he talks about teachers of God and advanced teachers. So you're a teacher of God, because any time you do anything where you're willing to be wrong and have your perception changed, you're teaching yourself and teaching others that you're willing to be a student. Really, as a teacher, all you're doing when you're a teacher is saying, I'm willing to be a student. So anytime what you got off me this morning was the willingness to be a student. That was it. And what we get off Jesus in the book is he says, I was willing to be wrong. I was willing to have the Holy Spirit correct my perception. He leads us. He's our teacher. He says, as a teacher, I'm showing you how I was a student. So can you be a student?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're teaching others to be a student. And really that's all we're doing. That's all teaching is demonstrating how to be a student, how to step back and let the Holy Spirit lead your mind, lead you. So we have to step back. We have to and let the Holy Spirit lead us. We have to trust the Holy Spirit. So this is the development of how we don't know we've got a Holy Spirit in our mind, how we start to understand what that is, and how we start to trust that. So don't worry about trying to be or think that you're not a teacher of God, Kathy. Just know that you being on this group, doing the stuff that you're doing with Pathways of Light, all you're doing is look what you've done for your son. You've helped him by saying this is what's worked for me. So you are a teacher of God, unwillingly or unwittingly or unknowingly. We all are. The teachers of God have trust in the world because they have learned that it is not governed by the laws the world made up. It is governed by a power that is in them but not of them. It is this power that keeps all things safe. It is through this power that the teachers of God look on a forgiven world. So just, Mark, this is sort of talking about the mind that's already awake to a different forgiven world. When this power has once been experienced, it is impossible to trust one's own petty strength again. So one's own petty strength is the ego. Who would attempt to fly with the tiny strength of a sparrow when the mighty wings of an eagle have been given him? And who would place his faith in the shabby offerings of the ego when the gifts of God are laid out before him? What is it that induces them to make the shift? Okay, so this is the first, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections to the development of trust. First, they must go through what might be called a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away, but it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognised. How can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light. So that's the first stage where you start to get this, seeing these things differently. He is not yet at a point at which he can make the shift entirely internally. And so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the teacher of God has learned that much, he goes on to the second stage. So you might, as you're hearing these words, you might sort of be getting like some illumination in your mind about some of your journey where some changes in your situation, external circumstances have changed. You might find that you've left relationships, you have moved houses, moved jobs, changed jobs. So sometimes there's a little shake-up in things. For me, I think that was when I left my marriage, my first marriage of 20 so years. I left that, and I think I was couldn't help but see some of the things that I had valued were valuing. I started to see that chasing this career, I had achieved quite a high success, seemingly in the world, a successful career, and found that there was nothing there. I didn't feel anything other than just still depressed and anxious, even though seemingly in the world I achieved quite a bit. And also, I found myself leaving the marriage, felt very, even though at that particular time I wasn't really having this experience of hearing the Holy Spirit. Once we realise what the Holy Spirit is, we start to maybe recognise that we've had guidance in the past and not really called it that. So next, the teacher of God must go through a period of sorting out. This is always somewhat difficult because having learned that the changes in his life are always helpful, he now must divide all things on the basis of whether they increase the helpfulness or hamper it. He will find that many, if not most of the things he valued before will merely hinder his ability to transfer what he has learned to new situations as they arise. Because he has valued what is really valueless, he will not generalise the lesson for fear of loss and sacrifice. It takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters and circumstances are helpful. It is only to the extent to which they are helpful that any degree of reality should be accorded them in this world of illusion. The world value can apply to nothing else. So the first period is a period of undoing, the second period is a period of sorting out. So you probably can reflect, if you've been on this journey for a while, probably can reflect on maybe you're in this period now, maybe you've passed through this particular part and you're reflecting back and saying, yeah, I did some sorting out, and you might have a little giggle at how you thought you were sorting stuff out. But at the time you really think you are. And it's not that he's laughing and I'm not laughing. It's just that we have to giggle it away. And I know I look back and I think, oh yeah, I was doing certain things and thinking about certain things anyway, it's just a way of trying to understand we do our best to try and understand what's valuable and what's valueless.
What's important there, I think it sort of, I mean, it doesn't say it out loud, but it really sort of alludes to, the terror of relinquishment in our mind, how deep the fear goes in a certain sense, because there is such a sense of loss and sacrifice as we relinquish these concepts of self, the self.
Yeah, he talks more about that one of the later stages. I think he doesn't really talk about the fear and the terror here, because I think what happens is he's just saying that that we're sort of trying to decide for ourselves, what the sorting out thing. So we're going to say, oh, I'm not going to make food such a big issue, but I'm going to hang on to my bank account and I'm going to worry about that and all this sort of stuff. So we sort of start to do a little bit of sorting out and think, oh, look, maybe I'll be a bit freer around this thing. And so we do this sort of little sorting out. But I think this sentence here where it says it takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters and circumstances are helpful. It is only to the extent to which they are helpful that any degree of reality should be accorded them. So in other words, what he's saying there is that a lot of the time on your journey with the Course, you might go into a new relationship with someone and you think that, oh, Spirit's guided me. I felt guided to this person. I really felt this great connection to them. And you actually think that it's to get love, right? But what he says is that it takes great learning to understand that all these things, it's only to the extent of which they can be helpful. And when he means helpful, he means the triggers that are going to come up for you. And you're not going to interpret that way. You're not going to say, oh, great, here's this wonderful person I've got to get into. I feel like I want to be in a relationship so they can trigger me. You're never going to see it, but that's literally, we'll get to the end, we're going to see that all those triggers will be really welcomed in the end. We'll see, okay, this is, in the end of the end journey, we're like, okay, I want these triggers. I want a trigger. Please show me anything in my mind that is unhealed. So eventually going to be welcoming that, but initially we think the thing is going to be helping us get what the ego wants. And the word value can apply to nothing else. So in other words, he says it takes great learning to understand that. And that just takes a long time. So the third stage through which the teacher of God must go can be called the period of relinquishment. If this is interpreted as giving up the desirable, it will engender enormous conflict. Few teachers of God escape this distress entirely. There is, however, no point in sorting out the valuable from the valueless unless the next step is taken. The third step is rarely, if ever, begun until the second is complete. Therefore, the period of overlap is apt to be one in which the teacher of God feels called upon to sacrifice his own best interests on behalf of truth. So just
is to sacrifice his ego's best interests?
Yes, well that's what it's pointing to there, yeah, his ego's. So in the example that I gave is getting into a new relationship, and you think, oh, I'm going to get into this relationship, and I'm going to practice my spirituality, and I'm going to be skipping along the beach with this, happily with this lovely new person, and, because we're so on a spiritual path, or they look spiritual, or even they just look whatever, however you see it. And so they overlap because you're called to relinquish your attachment. So the relinquishment of the attachment to that person and meeting that person, and you thinking, I'm going to get the love, and then really going deeply with the Course's teachings that I can't really get anything out of this. And he says that that they're sort of overlap. Therefore, the period overlap is apt to be one in which the teacher of God feels called upon to sacrifice his own best interest. So you're going to feel that you're making a sacrifice of the love that you think you can get. Right, so it just brings a lot of confusion, a lot of distress, and most of us that have gone through this part or going through this, it does feel painful. It's not, this journey is not an easy one, but the end result is good. So you're going through a period, he's telling us, he's not sugarcoating it, he's telling us.
Well, the ego's journey is certainly not an easy one, so,
Yeah, so what do you got to lose?
Yeah, that's it. What choice have you got? At least this way you know that it's, you might go through some distress, and
might have some help.
That's right.
Okay, so there's some hope here to be offered. He has not realised as yet how wholly impossible such a demand would be. He can learn this only as he actually does give up the valueless. Through this, he learns that where he anticipated grief, he finds a happy lightheartedness instead. Where he thought something was asked of him, he finds a gift bestowed on him. So anything that, so what he's asking us to do is see when we look at something as valuable, whatever that is, and we'll have whatever you feel is valuable as you're going through, and to turn that around and see that there is no value in that. The ego comes in and says, so say for example, I was guided away from my job. The ego said, you'll be homeless, can't trust the Holy Spirit to bring in, he says he's going to bring in what you need, but you've got no evidence of that. How can you trust a voice in your mind? Can you really trust that voice? And it says you'll be bereft, you'll be hungry, you'll be suffering, and you'll end up dead. So the ego always actually has death and suffering at its core of its, whatever it brings in as its sacrifice. And so when we really go and we say this is valueless to me, the ego comes in with the story of sacrifice and loss. But he says then you end up, if you're really willing to go through this and really participate and say, I'm really willing to put myself out here and expose this and trust, he says, where you anticipated grief, you'll find happy lightheartedness instead. So that was a little bit like, when I was really fearful of lying in the gutter and suffering and being homeless. That was it. I was being lighthearted. Okay, so now comes a period of settling down. This is a quiet time in which the teacher of God rests a while in reasonable peace, because you've gone through a period of really seeing, and you've really, it's not an easy thing, and only you can do it. No one else can really come to this. You've got to really join your guide. Now, during these periods for me, when I went through these periods, I was joining with the Holy Spirit and Jesus, but I'd already had a good connection to them. This is why it's really important to have that connection. So you need to be developing this period where you're sitting down and you're either writing to the Holy Spirit and then writing the answers, or asking some questions and waiting and trusting, or seeing the answers come in, or seeing something coming through that's helping you. So the second period is just a settling down. Now he consolidates his learning. Now he begins to see, the value, the transfer value of what he has learned. Its potential is literally staggering. And the teacher of God is now at the point in his progress at which he can see in it his whole way out. Give up what you do not want and keep what you do. How simple is the obvious and how easy to do. The teacher of God needs this period of respite. He has not yet come as far as he thinks. So that particular sentence, I used to get stuck on that. I go, oh, wow. Oh, how much more do I have to go? Because I kept thinking I was at the end of the journey. And I'm like, I've not come as far as I think. Oh, okay. But I don't even know what's left to come. Yet when he's ready to go on, he goes with mighty companions beside him. Now, mighty companions are not people. There's a lot of people that talk about mighty companions as their friends, their groups, their community. And I love it. Ken Wapnick says, your mighty companions are your thoughts. They're the mighty companions are your mighty thoughts.
Yeah, I always think of them as the experiences I have. Like they're the ones that show you what is.
Yes, that's exactly right. Anything that because you've built up, you've got to this period, you've gone through a lot of undoing and relinquishing. You've had a look and you've like, say for example, you were collecting a whole lot of stamps for years and years to think one day they'll be worth a lot of money, or one day I'll give them to a grandson or something, and you were going without things to have these special stamps. You might get to that stage and say, what the hell am I doing? You know, why don't I just give the money away to a charity or something like that? So you start to see, what am I storing? Really, it sort of comes into also like a storing up of the treasures that he talks about.
Is it knowledge is experience knowledge? You can go back and you've got that little sort of trust fund.
Yes.
You go back and you look at what you've been through, what the outcomes, and you've rejected a whole lot of stuff, but you've kept the critical parts.
That's exactly what he's talking about.
Saying?
Yeah, that's a great way to.
So that's saying experience is knowledge, everything else is information.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when he talks about that, when you've given up something and think there's going to be some big grievance, some sort of loss or sacrifice, and then you've seen, oh my God, I gave up that, and actually what came through was this freedom. So that's your mighty companion now. That experience, that testimony, that oh, I did that, and actually I expected this really bad thing to happen, and in fact it was really great. And so the more you build up those, they're like the mighty companions that go with you in your mind. Thanks for that, Teresa. That was, and Annie, you too. That was really good. So we'll see a few of us are joining in and really deepening this and making and really enriching this teaching. So I'm really, so if you feel it to say anything, yeah, throw it in. It's really good. So he has not yet come as far as he thinks, yet when he is ready to go on, he goes with mighty companions. Now he rests a while and gathers them before he goes on. So there's this period of contemplating about, you know, so you might just have a period where you've settled down. There might be a couple of months or something where not much is happening, and you start thinking about all the things that you've valued and some of the things you've seen that you've given away, and how much happier you feel that you're not attached to those things and not ruled by them. And so now we're going to move on to the period of unsettling. Yay! Yay, Law. I really look forward to being unsettled.
Can I speak to that, please?
Oh, yes, please do.
This is my area at the moment.
Your expertise.
So, period of unsettling. Yeah, that's an understatement. And Kate's really helped me see or have faith or have hope that what I appear to be going through, you know, right now is part of the journey to letting go completely. And it's not pretty. It's really full on. I had a little vision the other day of just going through this sort of like cavern, this dark cavern, and up ahead was Holy Spirit, Bruno, my teacher, with a torch leading the way, and my truth partner was ahead of me at the time. I feel like my truth partner's been in a lot of peace, and so it sort of appears that he might be a little bit further ahead, and that's not true, but because he's me, we're one, we're all one, but it looks like in form he's in a lot of peace and I'm not, but my not being in peace and having everything stirred up, all the mud at the bottom of the swimming pool, is part of getting to peace, but everything is always in the moment. So I can't have any attachment to it leading anywhere. I don't know what's up ahead in that cavern, other than I know that Holy Spirit is leading the way and leading me through this cavern, and I don't know how long that's going to take. But I certainly have, you know, we were talking about hope earlier. I feel like I've got hope and I have faith that whatever it is I'm going through it has to be done, but it's really, really full on. Like, it's a lot of people who, or, you know, minds who wouldn't be aware of this part of the process would say that they're failing. So yeah. I was feeling like I was failing. Nothing I was doing was working. Yeah. But like Cate showed me that, no, that's actually a good sign that nothing in the world is working. You know, things are working, but really the major things, like, okay, so I've got a home, I've got a shelter now. Most of you know that I've had a very big journey around that with what's been happening in my so-called home. But Cate earlier mentioned, you know, like if you've been through homelessness and not having a shelter and you've suddenly got a car to live in, it would be absolute paradise. And that actually came to me a couple of days ago. I just was like, oh, Annalie, you know, and I have experienced so-called homelessness before, and everything always worked out. Like, there was always a couch, there was always food, there was always a smiling face, there was always something there in the moment which kept me housed or comfortable enough. And the other day I just was like, okay, well, I'm very, very blessed to have this place, and also no commitments, you know, to outside things like a job, or I have all this time, I have all this space, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's my mind that is in terror, and my mind has been in terror, like totally fearing all the time that something bad's going to happen.
Mm.
So it's back to Byron Katie, and I said to you earlier, Kathy, I don't know if you're still there, but you know, Kathy mentioned that she'd done the Byron Katie workshop and that you wouldn't even know that this week. But for me, it's like, no, I don't necessarily get all the peace from doing the Byron Katie at the moment, because it's just stirring more and more stuff up that needs to come up.
Yeah.
So that's the unsettling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost Cate.
That's awesome, Annalie.
Is this the pre-mysticism step?
You've been so blessed with all this shit you're going
the
through.
period of unsettling. Yeah, when we read through
for that final step in that
it
cupboard
is.
that she's going to.
It is.
The altar will be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
Yeah, because if you think back to, in the lesson, I want the peace of God, it actually says when you really want the peace of God, the lesson will come up some form that's, you know, sort of applicable to you. And so, do you mind me sharing a little bit about what your lesson is, Annalie? About the mould? Okay. So Annalie has seen homelessness. She's seen it and she's not fearful of it. Okay. She has got a fear of some sort of invasion, some sort of like, so it's all the same, but it manifests into different things. So if you don't have a fear of financial insecurity or being homeless, it'll be fearful of something else. So hers is this, what happens is she's got these neighbours that live on top of her that keep running the bath, and all the water runs down into her apartment, and then she's got a fear of being invaded, so she's invaded by the water, and then she's invaded by the mould. So these are things that are accorded a meaning to our mind, because water can't hurt you, and in truth, mould can't hurt you. Their beliefs. And so, but in Annalie's mind, she's very fearful of these things. And so her lesson now is that, and also she's got a fear about being invaded by noise. So she's like, what happens all ramps up. Yeah. That the baby's come out. She's come into the apartment above Annalie. She's making a shitload of noise during the night, and the water is running, the bath's overflowing, the water's running down, and the mould's coming up. So I just said to Annalie, can you just imagine yourself on your bed and the whole apartment flooded, like 6 inches of water, and can you just lie there and be at peace? Can you just lie there and see that who I am cannot be affected by water in my apartment? And then see the mould, and then just see anything being mouldy, and just literally lie there and just experience it. So what happens in the final stages is we have to face what the ego's worst nightmare is for us. That's why I had to face being in the gutter, because I was so fearful of being homeless, but I didn't even know what was being held in my mind was I would be in the gutter, right? And then when I turned around and faced it all, I saw that's what I was fearful of, is ending up lying in the gutter. And then I was like, I have to go there. So I went there with Jesus, and he said, lie down there, Cate, lie down there, and I'll show you that there's nothing to be scared of. So what happens is when we face it, so I just asked Annalie to just go there and just lie in her bed, imagine herself being in the bed, imagine the whole place flooded out. And now that happens to people, their place does get flooded out. There's no reason to be out of peace because of that. It's just, you'll be totally taken care of. So it's literally just to see that, someone will come along and say, hey, come on, I've got a place for you, and how do I know that place isn't better? So maybe the place is meant to get flooded out. Who knows? All I'm saying is that the fear in the mind is what grips us. So we have to really face this, and this is the period of unsettling. The ego is going to ramp up the worst part of it. Any fear that you hold in your mind, it's going to push it all up, and it just seems the lesson that comes in, it's like the ego gives, so I call it, brings out the big guns. And before it's had these little pop guns, now it's just going to come. And you might have faced something when you had that operation. You might have had to face some really big issues about death, about, dying, anything, because those things represent death in some way to you. And that's, it says in the obstacles to peace, the last thing to focus on is death. So something's going to come in this period of unsettling. And when you go through it, and you were talking about it, that's sort of like the last step, because the last step is a period of achievement.
It's mystical level.
Yeah, yeah.
See, I know this in here, Kate,
Yeah.
but I've got to go back to when the rubber hits the road, and I keep getting told, you can't skip it, girl.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. These periods, they're long roads in
It's sort of
themselves.
interesting, but it's just kind of it's becoming more cohesive.
Yeah.
What's going, because I have a lot of knowledge on many levels, but I somehow have fudged it, and
Yes.
I've been brought. It's for me to do it now.
Yeah,
on
you
the
could.
day-to-day stuff. Like when I look at the checkout check at the supermarket, I smile, because they're the basic nuts and bolts of what it's all about. Like the other day, I want this guy, the trolley collector. God, I could have had his guts for garters. I stewed over him for a while, and I thought, let it go. It's so minuscule.
Yes.
But God, it gets you.
Yeah, so it's just a practical application of it every day. And what seemingly small irritation is hiding a murderous rage.
Good and ordinary thing.
Good and ordinary thing. So
thank you.
Yeah, it's good to, you can have, the knowledge is good in a way, but the understanding, but really it's the practicing.
Because when I got sent back, and I'll say this, I just fought like mad not to come back into this dream life.
Yeah.
And I just said to them, you send me back and I'll show you I can do it on my own. Well, who is now singing a different tune? But it's an act of surrender. Because it's sort of like letting that anger go and seeing there's nothing demeaning in surrendering.
No.
You're going to a beautiful higher knowledge sometimes, but I read the text now, I think. Yeah, I don't need to go any further, but it's kind of evolving in a way, and
it's touching your heart, isn't it?
And also, Gary Renard said in his talk, what you have learned is always retained by the Holy Spirit. You will never lose it. Doesn't matter if you don't access it for quite a while. It is there in your account
for when you need it.
And Corinne says, when we're in the group, she said, there has been no conviction made by Spirit on your, there's no record.
Yes.
And I think that's really comforting too, so anyhow, enough of that.
No, that's good.
Give me a moment.
Thanks, Teresa. So the next stage is indeed a period of unsettling. Now must the teacher of God understand that he did not really know what was valuable and what was valueless. So even though we've gone through all these periods, he's telling us but you really don't know. All that he really learned so far was he did not want the valueless and that he did want the valuable. Yet his own sorting out was meaningless in teaching him the difference. And this is what I mean, like we try to sort things out thinking that we've got it, we don't.
So in other words, that we're actually valuing some things that really and truly aren't.
So you might say, oh, I've been valuing this $5,000 coat that I've been hanging on 2 years. I'll give that away. But you really love that op shop jacket that you bought. You'll never give that away. Right.
Okay.
But you think, oh, it's okay because it's from the op shop. So you put the value that, oh, you see, this is the thing, is that any attachment to anything, it doesn't. So these are the sort of little things that you can misperceive as what's valuable.
Wow.
Yet his own sorting out was meaningless in teaching him the difference. The idea of sacrifice, so central to his own thought system, had made it impossible for him to judge. He thought he had learned willingness, but now he sees that he does not know what the willingness is for.
Can you talk about that a bit, Cate, about not knowing what the willingness is for?
I'll just read on a little bit more and then I'll go back to it, okay? Just because the next couple of sentences relate to it. And now he must attain a state that may remain impossible for a long, long time. He must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only that he be taught what he really wants in every circumstance. Were not each step in this direction so heavily reinforced, it would be hard indeed. So this is, so I'll just go back to what you said, Annie.
Even hearing those words is terrifying to me. He must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only that he be taught what he really wants.
And because the reason why that feels terrible is because we have the belief that we're going to be sacrificing something or losing something. And he talks about, this willingness. He thought he had learned willingness. So we've gone along, oh yeah, I'm really willing.
Yeah.
We're not. We got no idea how much we're hanging on to stuff.
Yeah.
I'm pretending to let them go. But now he sees that he does not know what the willingness is for. Right, so what happens here? Now he does not know what the willingness is for. So we think the willingness is for sorting things out. Well, we sort it out ourselves. We have some inkling of what's valuable, valueless, but we haven't really. So he talks previously in one of the other sections that we haven't generalised. So we really, what we're coming to really see is nothing has any value. We've accorded everything the value or the meaning it has for us.
Yeah.
And am I willing to let go of everything? So this is the final period, and this is where we face the abyss, or we face the ring of fire. We all face it in one way or another. And now he must attain a state that may remain impossible for a long time. He must learn to lay all judgment aside. So, for example, what's coming to mind is that I was guided to sell my unit, and, you know, it was a lovely little unit. It was in a great location, my judgment, my value. And I did it because I was guided. So it's sort of like this is a period where I have to give up this whole sort of like not believing in the laws of the world, right? So the laws of the world say if you have a property, you hang on to it, you wait for it to increase in value, then you sell it, you get more money and you amass wealth. And so to come to really give over everything to the Holy Spirit, it means you give over everything. And so I was guided to sell. Now, when I say this, I'm not saying you will be guided in the same way, but I was guided to relinquish that. It was a period, a little bit of unsettling, because I thought, well, I don't know where I'm going to go. I'd always in my life, like you, always said I've got to rely on myself the whole time. I've got to rely on myself. Can't rely on any man that I'm with to help me or, support me. I'll support myself. So this was a complete unsettling or giving over everything and saying use the money for whatever purposes. So all the money that I'd spent all my life saving up to get this one property with all my money was then given over. And that is it's a period where so he must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only that he be taught what he really wants in every circumstance. So what do I want? I want the peace of God. And I thought that I knew what the house was being used for, because at the particular time the house was, I was holding the Course in Miracles meetings there, and I was guided to leave it. So you really have to develop that deep trust. Now, even when I sold the property, I had, I don't know, maybe 200,000 in the bank after that. 95,000 of that was had to go to my dad, because he'd given me 95,000 when I bought the property, and he said to me, you know, if you sell it, I want it back. Anyway, I'm just giving you a little bit of the story. And then when I moved out from my mum's place, I was guided to use that money to live on. And that's not what the world says to do. It doesn't say to use up. The week that we bought this property here, I had got back down to 95,000, and that this property was bought. And when the transaction, like that particular time that it happened, I'd run out of money, and I had no idea where I was going to get any money from. And because I was paying rent at the other property, and I didn't know that this property was going to get bought, that I was going to have no mortgage or rent. I had no foreseeing that. So that's just that whole trusting. But that trust, so this period of unsettling, well, the period of achievement, the achievement was knowing that I would be just complete trust in knowing whatever I needed would be brought in, however I needed it. That period of unsettling, I would say, in my journey was when I did the surrender, the going into the gutter with Jesus, and bringing in this, just having all that freedom, like it was freeing. I had this beautiful gift, or it could be over there. I'm not sure which one it sort of falls into, but so with Annalee, she is now facing the mould, the meaning of the mould. She's
the invasion.
She is not being guided to leave the property. She's following her own guidance. She is facing her biggest fears around what so-called mould and so-called water coming in. So this is how her lesson's given to her. My lesson was that I was guided to leave my job, and no other job was available. I literally had no money, seemingly no food, but the Holy Spirit said to me one day, look in your pantry. And I looked there, and he said, well, you could live for 3 months on the food there. So I had a lot of food. If you look at You look at it was, I had more than what I've got in my pantry here in the kitchen, and you look there, especially if we've got a lot of rice. And I had, a couple of kilos of rice there. So, and I was seeing, I had everything undone. I used to think that you had to eat a big variety of food to be healthy. I was shown that you could eat bowls of rice, breakfast, lunch and dinner. It had nothing to do with health. Nothing you eat, it does anything to your health. Your health comes from your free mind. All the laws, so we have to go through this period where we have all the laws that we believe in of the world undone. And that So with Annalee now, she's going through this period of unsettling. She's been very unsettled because she's got the mould, and she's trying to see differently. Lesson 76, there's no laws but God's. And it says, you've made the laws of nutrition. He says there's nothing in food. It doesn't do anything. It can't cause. There is not one bit of food that can cause you to feel anything.
Yeah, but what about the law of mould?
There's no law of mould. That's belief.
I mean, if I saw black mould everywhere, I'd be freaking out.
Okay, right.
I'd be expecting to get some.
If you'd never been
fungal
told,
infection.
if you'd never been told anything about mould, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know anything.
You know by the way that it acts.
Right. So no, you wouldn't. If you'd never been told anything about mould, you couldn't have a belief about it.
Yeah, an innocent mind's like a not knowing state of mind. That's the mind free of concepts.
Yes.
And it's all past knowledge. It's all information. Like, look at all the so-called diseases and food allergies and things that 40 years ago never existed. They were unheard of. All these gluten, we hadn't even heard of gluten 40 years ago. And all these sort of allergies and foods that seem that they're attributed power to make you sick now, they were unheard of 40, when I was a kid.
Still, you can have a patient in a coma who's never heard of a drug that they're being given through their vein, and they haven't heard. So I think it's a bit more complicated. There must be some collective knowledge about going on.
Yeah, there'd be something there.
So, can I say something?
Yeah.
So interestingly, I've got back to my house because before, when you first started talking about my little situation with the mould, I ran out of charge. So I've come back home, and I was going to sit in the lounge room, but I couldn't reach the PowerPoint. So it means that I've come into my room, and I'm guided to lie down on my bed, and underneath my bed, and I'm on the floor at the moment because I threw out my mattress. It was very wet and mouldy. I've got like a camp mat now down here until I get, I'm actually guided to get a bed frame and a new mattress. And there's been a teaching around that because in the past I've always got secondhand stuff, and I'm guided to get something new and like a mattress with a 10-year warranty, which is going to cost a lot more money than I'd normally spend. And I've let go of the worries or the fears around the money. So there's been a teaching in that, and that will be delivered here. So I've even let go of sort of trying to organise someone to pick it up. I'm paying extra for it to be delivered. And then now I'm lying on this mattress, and underneath is this so-called mould. And for me, that would have been just like totally, I would never have done that. I'd never be surrendered to just lying on it because I know it can't hurt me. And I'm letting go. I'm letting go of any beliefs that anything can hurt me. And, you know, I've got the course to thank me for that. I've got Cate to thank for that, because I just had so many fears about everything that could hurt me.
Yeah.
I don't want to live like that. And I know with placebo studies and things around disease or germs or whatever, that if something was actually really actually contagious, then everyone would get it. So, yeah, it is a big thing for me to just be lying here. It's ironic, really, or it's a paradox. And I just feel really great.
Awesome.
So, Cate, you could sort of, a bit like you said last, I don't know when it was, but, you know, we can be with the food and remind ourselves, Jesus is telling me this is nothing. It has no power. It has nothing. So we can do that the same with anything, with the mold or whatever, whether our mind's starting to believe that or hear that, yet we can keep reminding ourselves this is nothing. This has no nutritional value. It's kind of funny because I go out with Johnny, who I live with, and, like, you know, I buy whatever, something, meat pies out of, or, you know, TV dinners or something. He's going, oh, that's terrible. That's got no nutrition in it. And but I think he means other food does. But I can be reminding myself that this has no nutrition.
Yeah, there's
This has no power in it. This has no value. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's actually nothing.
It's nothing. Everything. Look at everything as like a placebo. So if I pick up a banana and I believe I'm allergic to bananas, I'll have an allergic reaction. If I believe bananas give me strength, maybe I think that they can make me run a kilometre really fast. Maybe someone somewhere decided that they were going to bring up a belief about bananas and put it out, lots of ads, and convince everybody, and everyone will start doing it. And there's an illusionist called Darren Brown. I was going to put up this link. He does this whole thing where he sets up this big fake building.
Is that Darren Brown?
Darren Brown.
Yeah,
he sets up this pharmaceutical company, fake. He puts actors in there, fake doctors. All these people come in with fears. One's fearful of heights, bridges. The other one's got fears of talking to people, and he says this is a new wonder drug. The American government's tested it with their army. They take it when they go fighting, takes away all your fears. It's a sugar pill, right? But he says people will believe it more if you give them an injection. The injection works better because their mind places more belief on an injection. So he gives an injection, saline injection. He says if people take a pill 4 times a day, they're more likely to believe it'll work. So he's studied the beliefs, how you believe things. So he gives them all, and all their fears go. Then he said the same to another group. He said to another group that, well, their allergies, this will take away all your allergies. This guy came on and said, I've had dermatitis for years. It's just disappeared this week. This medication is absolutely amazing, because he believed in it. So, but the placebo doesn't work. If you don't give it the belief, there's a couple of people that just said, I don't believe this will work. They didn't know it was a placebo. They didn't think it would work. It wouldn't work for them.
Yeah.
So everything is, Jesus says in the Course, everything is your belief in it. So you can hang the miracle on it. He says if you believe that you don't believe that you can heal yourself by your mind, you can hang the miracle on a product, anything. You could even hang the black mold is actually going to make you strong. You could have a belief on anything. You'd go up, eat it, and say, you know, it's something that's helpful rather than belief being harmful. And we can't believe, we're just so shocked that we're so conditioned with our beliefs. They've been, from day one, our parents have said, "Oh, drink up your milk, it's good for you, it's got calcium in it, it does this, it does that. Eat this, don't eat that, don't eat lollies, they'll rot your teeth." Yeah, everything, because the body is in the mind, it follows along from the belief in it.
That's like the lesson 1 or 2. Everything, I say that to my medications each morning.
Yes.
I say, the only meanings these have, sweetheart, is what I'm putting into them now, but I'm still...
Well, that's the thing.
It's
a process, isn't it? I mean, I'm starting to understand this more and more, but at this point, all I know is that, oh my God, do I ever have some beliefs?
Yeah,
but
sure.
I can't get rid of them just yet.
No, you won't.
But at least I'm
away.
aware of them, that, oh my God, I believe this, but somebody else doesn't. So then, how can it be true unless we all,
I think they did this thing with pharmaceuticals. They, because we just go to the chemist and we purchase the medication.
Yeah.
And then one time, I think they took all these medications, actually tested what was in it, and half the stuff that they said was in it wasn't in it, or was at a lesser degree. It doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter. It's, if you believe that it's going to work, it'll work. If you don't believe, it won't work. That's it. Everything is your belief. Your belief about everything. That's it.
It comes up for me like Johnny, who I live with, has a liver transplant, so he has to take anti-rejection pills, seemingly for the rest of his life.
But that's a very strong belief he's got, isn't it? I mean, I would have, not that I would ever think of having, but you once you'd had that, you'd believe that if you didn't do the right thing, your body would end. So.
Yeah, and get really sick. And I mean, I would have that too in me. Like, I would be fearful that if he didn't.
So what happens at times, Annie, is that the thing does reject, and I say, oh, the anti-rejection pills didn't work. It's all, nothing works for everybody all the time. That's why it's in your belief. And you might really, really want the pill to work, but you see it's the secret beliefs in your mind.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's the hidden stuff that is affecting us that we don't realise.
Kate, I wrote this down. This was many meetings back, that if it was good, it would work for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple philosophy.
It is. Yeah.
It's sort of so special.
Yeah.
Like you would like a certain perfume, I'd like another one. Or we went out for a meal. Our specialness is in I'm getting there's not that commonality or joining.
See you later, everybody. Thank you.
Is the mold getting to
Bye.
you?
Finally.
The mold's taking you out.
Oh, I'm just blissful, darling. Blissful.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Love you.
Bye.
She's at a leave.
So Kate, it's like the other day when I read that Facebook post and then that comment you wrote, and then I used that for my sore throat and it went. It's the same thing, isn't it? Because I believed in it, it worked.
Yes. Now, if you believe you can catch a cold, and we're told, hey, cover your mouth, you'll catch that. If you don't believe you can catch anything, once I realised that that's a belief, I just said to myself, I can't catch anything. Now, Kevin's been sick this weekend, and he says, be careful, you'll catch this. And I say, I can't catch anything. It's impossible for me to catch anything. It's impossible for me to be sick.
Right.
It's funny how I can take on some of them. Like, I'm a bit like that too. In fact, I physically, even though I've had a lot of mental anguish, I haven't physically been sick for, I don't know, a long time. Occasionally, a bit like you, Penelope, I had a little scratchiness in my throat, and it's almost like I just be still with it a moment and let it go, which isn't really healing, it's just letting the symptom go, obviously.
Yeah, there's something you're doing in that moment where you're you're bringing some truth to it.
Right.
Sort of, they're not,
So it's like I go, that can't make me sick. I mean, it's a bit like even when I was 19, I think I drank the water in India, you know, where everyone goes, you can't drink the water in India sort of thing. But it's funny. So I see with some things, you know, it's very easy for me to drop like that can affect me, but there's other little subtle things.
Well, everyone joins in it and you get it flashed up onto the TV, you know, the characters in the shows, everyone, all the ads, you know, they've got everyone with covers over their face, don't cough, don't do this, wash your hands. It's all programmed into us constantly, that this is what it is, and this is how it gets transmitted, and this is, and there's no exceptions to this. There's no exception. It's like a finite teaching, and it's really good to know this. And pain, you can actually go through life without any pain. There is a way to be above it. I've done it, started doing it in the last few years, being able to rise above pain. So you just won't experience it at all.
I've got to go. Bye.
Bye, Penelope.
Bye.
Bye.
So let's just finish off reading the last little bit, which is the period of achievement. And finally, there is a period of achievement. It is here that learning is consolidated. Oh my gosh. The dog walked past. Hey, Lily. Guys. Keep your shirts on. Now what has worked.
Lily! Stop it. No. Beside Lily.
Now what was seen as merely shadows before becomes solid gains. So that's sort of this introduction of this idea about beliefs. You start to see, you'll start to have these, as you shift away from this belief that I can catch that, and you go, oh, I don't believe I can catch a cold. And then you have it come in, you're like, oh, there's solid gains. Okay, I'm seeing now. And you might get some pain, and you might raise your mind above it and say, I cannot experience pain. I am not a body. I am free. I am as God created me. And you get above that, and you have no experience. And the pain leaves to where you say, oh, actually, that pain is in my mind, seemingly experienced in the body. So these, what were shadows before, like little bits and pieces, they become solid. So they can start to consolidate. You start to be seeing them more and more. So this is a period of achievement where all the things that you've been introduced to, you've started to get little resonance with, start to really form. So as you can see, I'm in this period of achievement now. Like I've had that time where I walked up the mountain and back, and totally unfit, never had done any exercise for 2 years, walked up and down, completely lifted my mind up. When I pulled my mind back into my body, there was excruciating pain. And then I just lift my body out of it. And then the next day, no soreness, nothing. So there was no even after effects because I'd forgotten it. And then, you know, the banging my head on the window, having the boot come down on my head, initially feel this stabbing of pain. And then just, I am not a body, I am free. I am as God created me, the pain goes. And it just lifts up and it's gone. So pain, you don't have to experience pain. There is a way. So now what was seen as merely shadows before becomes solid gains to be counted on in all emergencies as well as tranquil times. Indeed, the tranquility is their result, the outcome of honest learning, consistency of thought, and full transfer.
What does full transfer mean?
Right, that means when I say I cannot get sick. Now, previously to that, I would be entertaining ideas that maybe I can't get sick. Okay, the Course says that I can never be sick. It is my mind.
I should believe this.
Yeah, so the full transfer is certainty of it and the demonstrating it. This is the stage of real peace, for here his heaven state fully reflected. Now, in this, the highest you can go in this world is just what they call a reflection of heaven, because really to be fully in that heavenly state, you would have, you wouldn't have a body, because we're not meant. A true self is without a body.
It's outside perception completely.
So the happy dream is where we're not really. We look after our body. It's sort of seen more as like a car, as a vehicle to get the Holy Spirit around. Drive the Holy Spirit, walk the Holy Spirit here and there. So it's given over. It's given a new purpose. It's not about getting anything or attaining anything or showing or being successful. It's given a new purpose.
Repurposed.
From here, the way to heaven is open and easy. In fact, it is here. That's it. It is here. Who would go anywhere if peace of mind is already complete, so the full transfer is complete? And who would seek to change tranquility for something more desirable? So that's what I saw. I saw, well, I've got nothing more to do now.
That's really where you're standing at the end of time with Jesus, and basically you can be of full service.
That's it. And what could be more desirable than this? So that's it.
I love this. Oh my God. I know, like maybe a couple of years ago I read this, but it didn't. I feel like it's the first time I've read it today.
Is that lovely thing that was on, you know how Ken and Gary have on Facebook? And I don't know if I've saved it on the phone, but I have it on my iPad. It says something about the fact you're not reading the Course in Miracles. You are the book of the Course in Miracles. So don't make the mistake of thinking, you know, your identification with the book, because you are the book.
Yeah.
It's so beautifully
described.
Yeah.
All right, so thanks for that. Is there anyone that's got any questions or any comments about what we went through today?
Any more shortcuts without all that?
No, sorry. That's it. There's no shortcuts.
I got a question about my daughter's got a peanut allergy, and she certainly didn't pick that up.
What has she got?
Peanut allergy. We only found out about that when she had an allergic reaction to peanut, and she didn't know about peanuts. Probably from 3 or 4, something like that. So.
Yeah. There is a way that she can be free of that.
Sure, but she didn't have a belief that she was allergic to peanuts, so we certainly weren't thinking about it. We didn't have a problem with peanuts. Assumedly, she wanted to experience some suffering.
So what happens is we come into this world, we come in as an ego, and we have a whole ego life already done and dusted. So every part of our life, all the allergies, all the sicknesses, everything is already, our whole life is already done. It's already happened, and we live it through. So your daughter, what she's coming into a peanut allergy. The only way she can change that is to awaken. And you would say a lot of people get really stuck on babies coming in, like maybe a baby's born and lives for 3 hours and dies. Can't, you know, or a baby gets cancer.
So this is beliefs held from previous
it's come
life.
from previous lifetimes. Yeah.
We say that our minds are just incredibly powerful in how they go to work subconsciously. I mean, they created the whole universe. We don't know about planets millions of light years away.
Yeah, that's really good.
And but sorry.
Fraction that beneath the conscious level.
Yes, that's so true. And and of course, we have no idea of the magnitude or the power of our mind. We just like see the little tip of the iceberg, and then there's this whole iceberg underneath. And we're scared of the power of our mind. We want to remain in littleness because we're very fearful, and I connected to that too when I first heard that teaching. I'm scared of the power. What can I do with that power? But I was already doing it. I was already creating a world of separation. So.
And like basically, I mean, like all illness really comes from that guilt that's held in the mind, that's believed in, and that's just manifested as seemingly different illnesses too, can be projected out into different illnesses, seemingly in different bodies.
Guilt that, or guilt.
Yeah. So we push away guilt and we push it out onto others. So there's all these sort of steps of owning the guilt so we can release the guilt to be free of it. So we have to stop pushing it out and making my dad guilty for, he says we point our finger and say, brother, at your hand I die, which means I'm sick and suffering because of the stuff that you did to me. And that has to be reversed and say, I'm doing this to myself. Oh, look at your eyes going, I can't believe that I'm doing this to myself. Yes.
And that's happening from a very young age. I mean, like you're talking about your daughter, with her peanut allergy. I mean, I was 4 or 5 years old. I wanted to kill myself. I was completely dark, and all I saw was a world that ended up in death, so that there was no purpose to it. And, so that it just shows you how you bring the world with you when you come. And, of course, it was all my parents' fault, or especially my mother, for having me and bringing me into this world. So all that guilt was projected onto my parents, well, like I said, particularly my mother, all that rage and at that point. So, it's not like, you hear people going, oh, children are so innocent, blah, 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 blah. It's like not my experience at all.
They haven't reached their potential. They're going to miss going to school, going to university, travelling, getting married, having children. You think, you stand back and you think, it's what they've chosen to do. Yeah. But it's very hard when, it becomes very emotive around children.
One thing about the Course in Miracles is it gives you the answer to every single thing you've ever wanted, but it's not the answer you want.
Right?
It's not the answer you want, but it answers everything. And it also says the ego asks questions that there's no answer to, because its question is actually saying a statement. It's not actually asking a question. When it says, why did the impossible happen? It's saying impossible happened, and why did it happen? And the Course is saying impossible didn't happen. So it asks a lot of questions about the world. It says this world never happened.
That's pretty amazing stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I say something to Mark's question?
Yes, Nikki.
Whenever this kind of thing comes up in my life, I'm seeing, I'm being told about people who are sick. I always go to lesson 38, there is nothing my holiness cannot do, and apply the lesson. And some of the things that have happened to people are really surprising. I haven't talked to them. I've just done it all in my mind. They don't even know me. And then later on I hear about them.
Mm-hmm.
So you just do not know what can happen when you apply that lesson.
I don't even know the lesson.
Have a look at it. Number 38.
There is nothing my holiness cannot do.
Oh, that was it.
So there's been a lot in today's,
Oh my God, jam packed.
yeah, poor Mark, he must be, mine is gone. Okay, so we'll finish off now. But thanks everyone. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, girl.
Annalie. Oh, Annalise still got her other.
I don't know if Annalie's there or
We'll
not.
do a group hug, guys, if you want to hang on just for a few minutes.
Four-leggeds.
Hi.
You're not smaller than Michael.
I'm not smaller than everyone,
Very nice.
except Bill and Fred. And
Thanks everyone for
the beautiful
joining
day.
in and just
So lovely.
this period is where we drop in the silence and just be the love. Just envelop everyone in your love.
Bye,
Thanks,
beautiful.
everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks for everyone for joining.
See you next week.
Love this group.